Look how the stars turn on. Look how the stars turn on. When I hold you close. When I hold you close. When I hold you close. The stars turn on.
Hello and welcome to Season 4, Episode 35 of the PressBox, in association with the unit. Well, a season that felt longer than any other, that had more twists and turns on and off the field than a roller coaster at Emerald Park, is finally over, with a drab, scoreless draw away to Drogheda United on Friday, putting an end to this 2024 story, on the field at least. So with John Daly departing after the game, the attention had already turned to 2025. We'll have some positive updates to share on the plans for next season in tonight's show, with Ciaran Kilduff set to be named as new Dundalk FC boss on Wednesday afternoon. So before we go into that, here's what you had to say on Killer's return, with some comments from fans and listeners, as always brought to you in association with Malone Financial Services. So we've three or four of them, Jim. I think, to be fair, it's referencing Ciaran Kilduff, kind of more wishing him well and different bits and bobs. I'll run through one or two of them and then we can kind of get going. Kevin Mullen said, delighted for Ciaran. He did a great job with Athlone ladies and is a young coach with a point to prove. Hopefully the fan base get fully behind him. I'm looking forward to seeing the team he assembles in action next season. Sean Hip Hop said he loves the appointment and adds he really should be under no pressure to be able to improve himself as a manager next season, and it's only a good thing for us. Hopefully we go up the season after. Fintan Kieran said he needs to be given time to build a team and left alone just to get it done. Off-field matters need to be resolved ASAP as we can just get back to the football. Rory Gilson said get behind him and give him time. Huge task ahead. Hugh McArdle said with news of a new manager, the club must be confident of obtaining its license. And Simon Canning said he did a very good job at Athlone. Big step to walk into the Dundalk FC job. Does he also have the A license? So I suppose all the questions are very generic and similar to us, I suppose, wishing Ciaran Kilduff well. But I'll kind of go on to you. The appointment of Ciaran Kilduff, it obviously broke today, being Tuesday. And it'll be announced hopefully when most people are listening to this. There'll be more details, but I suppose what were your general thoughts and about the appointment and kind of what people can expect?
Yeah, I suppose I would have heard there was definitely talks last Friday, kind of heard this morning that it was going to be Kilduff, and like I think it's a good appointment first and foremost to go. Simon asked it there about the A license. He does have that. Look, he's a young coach. He's only 36, so like there's players in the league older than that still playing. So he's very much someone. I suppose. Look, it could go. Look, you could point experience manager. It could go either way. There's an element of risk to it. Let's be honest. But like, he's not a newbie to this either. I mean, he took, if you go through his sort of resume, he took Maynooth to the quarterfinals of the FAI Cup in 2021, eventually losing to Bows, which there's no, there's no, that's nothing to be ashamed of. You look at even his record in the women's game, and like last November, his Athlone ladies team won the women's FAI Cup. Just last month, he guided them to the league title, and they only missed out on a double after losing the cup final again, the Shells, a game after which he obviously departed. But now, I'm a good League of Ireland fan, or I consider myself a good League of Ireland fan, in that I know various players and squads and stuff like that. But I'll be completely hands up and honest. I would know very, very little about the women's game, and I doubt many fans do. And what impressed me about that is, like, I can't imagine, and this is a guy who was playing for the likes of ourselves. I think it was most recently Shelburne. I doubt he was watching much women's football. It's only in recent years as well that maybe you can watch a women's game online or whatever. So he was able to sort of put himself in there, at the deep end in an environment maybe he didn't know a lot about. I mean, we all have this sort of fantasy football thing where, oh, like if say money was no object, wouldn't it be lovely to maybe go out and recruit, I don't know, the Bows left back and the Rovers right winger and the the Derry centre forward or whatever it is, and you know them by name and you can maybe spot a talent coming up or whatever, and whether you're right or wrong about that, but we'd all have an idea if we could, if you're say one of the top teams, Shelbourne Rovers now or whatever, you can look around the league and say they'd be a good addition to that squad, whether you're right or wrong, but we'd all have an opinion on it, shall we say. I'd have no opinion on the women's game, and I don't think most male fans of the league would either, because I couldn't tell you. Like you mentioned at Lone Ladies, I could probably name two of the squad. I couldn't name five, to fit a five-a-side team. So where I'm going with that is like Kilduff had to go into that league, learn all about the players, learn all about not just his own team, but the opposition. And obviously did it to a great deal of success. And where I think that's applicable here is because, again, we're like, as Dundalk fans, we've been spoiled in recent years in terms of like, we've had 16 seasons in the top flight, most of the sort of recent past up until this season. We were competing for something of some description. Even like this time last year, we just missed out on Europe on the final day. As unlikely as it might have been. So we're now entering a different market where you might have to sort of, look for example, who is the best young talent coming out of Bray Wanderers, Wexford, whatever, and maybe they're like, for example, even Cork going up as champions released a load of players today. Could 1, 2, 3, any of them be assets for Dundalk next season? I don't know, because I haven't been watching Cork. But I think Ciaran Kilduff has showed that ability to maybe take on a task in a sort of environment he wasn't familiar with and do a good job. That doesn't mean it necessarily translates, but the plus points for me are he knows the club, he gets what it's about, he gets the area. And if you go back to his playing career, which is not that long ago, he's played for the likes of Shelbourne, were his last club. He played for Shamrock Rovers with Stephen Bradley. He played with the likes of Stephen O'Donnell, who's at Bows. He played under Stephen Kenny, who's at Pats. He was down in Cork for a period where he, very briefly, but had a decent stint there and retained popularity or whatever. And my point with all that is, in recent years, we've turned to the loan market and with very success, let's be honest, and the UK market. And that's probably not something that's going to be maybe open to us for 2025. And maybe I'm wrong on that. But, if we can get the up-and-coming talent from Pats, the up-and-coming talent from Bows to come down the road and maybe, in the way that, like off the top of my head, say like Brandon Kavanagh, for example, was at Bray for a few seasons. Was it Joe Redmond went to Drogheda when they were in the first division, etc. So he has connections at the various clubs as well. And I'm not saying we need to overly exhaust that, but maybe getting one or two loan signings even in of that description who maybe aren't ready to go into, be it the Rovers team or the Pats team or the Shells team or whatever, but could benefit from a year of men's football. Well, I think that's worth exploring. So I think it ticks an awful lot of boxes in that regard. He's a decent guy as well. Look, being a decent guy doesn't maybe count for much, but I think he'd be a good ambassador for the club in terms of a face of it, and he'd be media friendly, all the rest. So I think it ticks an awful lot of boxes. Look, like any appointment, you can have your fors and against, but genuinely wish him well.
Yeah, I think for everyone, especially for the last kind of podcast of the season, and everything kind of, as we'll discuss the season now in more detail, maybe in a bit, like it's kind of ending on a nice note. And I think for fans and stuff, we can kind of get behind this. I think everybody, as you just kind of rightly referenced, probably know not enough about Ciaran Kilduff and his coaching methods and what he'll potentially bring. I think Wednesday at his interview our press conference, you'll be able to find out more than that. But I think as fans, I think with the local appointment, but the kind of ready-made knows Oriel Park, knows kind of the fans, knows what people in Dundalk expect. It is a good appointment. As we discussed kind of off air, it's not a left field appointment that, we're kind of left scratching our head. It doesn't mean it'll work or not, but I think it's something that people can be positive going forward. And I think that's a start. That's, and that's all, to be honest, we're talking here in a positive way. And I have to say, it's a weird feeling right now. Like I'm like, oh Jesus, this is nice. Like,
we can't lose on Friday. It's brilliant. We can't lose on Friday. And I don't have to build up as if we're going to win it on Friday either. But like, I think, look, the nature of the beast, and we were slagged in the past of being overly negative or whatever, and maybe there's an element of truth in that, but it was very hard for anyone, I think, to
absolutely
be
not. And by the way,
positive.
I'll call anybody out on that was hammering me all season. You're all negative, this and that and that and that and that. When we were losing games, and I just kept saying, well, we're losing games here, and I don't see us winning the next or scoring the next goal. We did come last, so we did get relegated. There was other factors, but like
because it's a season ending, and just because you're acknowledging we come last, do you want to apologise to the Sligo Rovers fans that you?
I did actually last night apologise to two Sligo Rovers fans, actually. So,
fair enough,
I did actually, but listen,
just another 3,000 to go.
Yeah, I did. I did actually have to apologise to them, and I wish I didn't, because the irony of when I was discussing it with them that we actually came last, it wasn't even them, and I don't know where they actually finished, sixth,
I think.
Yeah. So good season for them.
Right,
but
just to build on that, because yes, I know a lot of this will probably come out tomorrow, but just for and more will probably come out, but just to give a flavour of what this is all about and what it's going to look like. So he's coming in on a 2-year deal, so I think straight away, there is still that sort of looming threat of, do we get a license and that. I think it was someone did, I think Hugh McCardle asked about the licensing. So licensing, and maybe I'll come back to licensing actually, because that's I cover that maybe elsewhere. But I believe Killer's coming in on a 2-year deal. I know there were reports today that it would be a part-time setup. I'm led to believe it will be full-time. That may involve training in the evening, but it's going to be a full-time club next year. Apparently, that's the way it is. That we'll maybe get clarification on that tomorrow. I understand Jerry Spain, who many people will know, Jerry's from Ravensdale, and previously worked with Stephen Kenny for 4 seasons from the start of 2013 when Kenny came in to the end of 2016, just after the first Europa League run, which Kilduff would have featured prominently in. He's going to be coming in as his assistant. Jerry's obviously an A-licensed coach in his own regard, and he's previously coached at the likes of Wimbledon, Fulham, Charlton, QPR, where amongst others he worked with the likes of Raheem Sterling in his formative years. So he's well connected, knows the area, knows Dundalk as well. So I think that will be a popular appointment. I understand Liam Burns is expected to stay on. I know that was something that a lot of players and supporters mentioned, but I understand that Kilduff wants him involved, and now unless Liam has other plans, whatever, but that Liam Burns will be part of the setup. So chats have already taken place with certain players. So Daryl Horgan is fully committed and on board for 2025. Now, I know Daryl was under contract, but like that, just because you're under contract doesn't mean you're going to be here. Do we have to move you on, etc.? But Daryl Horgan is going to be here along with Dervin. I think they're two of the first sort of definitely nailed down as being here. Obviously, look, there's been speculation already about different players and will they be here, whether in or out of contract. But I'm led to believe, and look, we may get more on this tomorrow. I doubt he'll tell us his full list or whatever, but I believe Kilduff has already a list of players he wants to keep and a list of players he wants to let go, as well as transfer targets. So, and just to put it, because one I did hear, and it's obviously not going to happen now, but maybe this gives an idea of ambition or intent or whatever, but there was definite inquiries made for Brendan Clark, who has obviously just kept 16 clean sheets for Galway in the top flight, which was the joint best along with Conor Cairns. There were rumours maybe Brendan might retire or whatever, but he's just signed a new deal with Galway. So no, maybe no shame in losing out on that, but look, it shows maybe a level of the ambition to be going for someone as maybe like was there a better keeper than Brendan Clark in the Premier Division this season. That's open for debate, but I think he was certainly top three anyway. I don't think anyone could argue with that. So look, that will all be happening, I suppose, or and at least it kicks off that process now. Like, you must remember, the last, was it 2 years in a row, we were the last club in the country, I think, to sign anyone. So the very fact that the process is at least underway now is I think to be welcomed. Just a little bit on, I suppose I'll go back to the licensing thing now. So that is obviously the one, and it's still probably the one I think most of us fear, like, will you get a license? And that's probably still slightly up in the air. I think, as far as I'm aware, the FAI have kicked out that process a little bit for Dundalk. I know a portion of the licensing application is due in this Friday. I'm not sure when the final deadline for everything to be in is and a decision to be made, but I know there's difficulties. So one of the things, for example, and look, there's obviously the debt question, and I'll come back to that. But one of the difficulties, for example, is you have to outline, like, your pitch, the pitch and floodlights and stuff like that. So the floodlights are going to be upgraded at a cost of around about 200 grand. They're hoping to maybe start work on the relaying of the pitch in early December, so roughly a month from now. And one or both of them could derail, depending on the time it takes, that Oriel Park being ready for a February kickoff date, and the club have to request things like maybe to play, and it's happened with other clubs in the past where you might have to play X amount of games away from home to begin the season. So that is something, but I think that they're having issues with maybe, so we all know that the club was approved for the grant. This came out around the time of the potential liquidation, and but just how you actually draw that down, and details from the government departments has been hard to come by. So that's obviously a big part of the, kicking off that process, and you have to mention who you're, who's getting the job or the tender or whatever. So that is sort of hampering licensing a bit. I don't think it's a fatal blow by any means, but it's just sort of slowing maybe that process down. Now, the potential really good news is that there's apparently potential investment on the cards that could be known about this week if it happens. Now, it's if, because until these things are across the line, you never know. But what I have been told is, if this happens, it would see the club avoid SCARP. And the benefits of that is, I think if you avoid SCARP, you probably have no issue with your licensing, hopefully, because if you can pay your debts to a certain degree or keep things going, you can hopefully deal with the financial side of it that has to be sorted to get a license. But also, it would mean you're starting off the season on 0 points like everyone else. You're not starting off -10, -15. Now, that remains to be seen. I think, to be fair, and someone did contact me today without knowing who the appointment was at the time, but and said who'd be like mad enough to take this, given all the doubts over it. To be fair to Kilduff, he's not giving up anything in that he's not currently in employment. I think if you were going and maybe hypothetically taking, and just because they're up the road, but like Dara Doyle, who's currently the number 2 at Drogheda, and taking him as your new manager, you might be saying, Jesus, is he wise in the head giving up the Drogheda gig when he doesn't know if we'll have a team next season? But anyway, if this potential investment, if it comes off, and as I say, hopefully we'll know about it very, very soon, it would be massive in terms of just securing the future of things. But look, at least we know that there's I suppose the wheels are in motion in terms of preparing for 2025. I believe season tickets are going on sale next week, or yeah, roughly next week. The jerseys, there's designs in place um, with PlayerFit, so a deal has been agreed with PlayerFit where they will continue to produce our jerseys for 2025, despite all the they're obviously one of the people owed money by the club, but like that shows that there's at least something amicable happening in the background. I think that the only thing maybe holding that up is the sponsors at the moment. So a deal has been agreed with a locally based business um, to sponsor the club next season in terms of front of shirt. But they want assurances that the club will be sort of around next season. So that kind of goes hand in hand with your licensing predicament. So look, but it's certainly, I'm not saying it's out of the woods yet, if like it's not, but I think that's, and maybe you'll contradict me on this, but I think it's certainly moving in the right direction to be positive. I think certainly further away from death's door. And just before you come in on that, because I've one more thing that was agreed on today, which again is a positive for the club. So I think just this evening, the club, and I think this will be announced again this week probably or whatever, but I think the club have secured a contract this evening with the LMETB and the FEI to run educational training programs in the YDC starting from again January 2025. So again, it's on the back of the pitches opening and stuff, it's another thing, just great to see that active again and bringing in revenue to the club. I'm not sure what that revenue is or what it's not my business, but something is better than nothing. Let's say so. Like I say, far from I wouldn't quite say we're out of trouble yet, but certainly there's a bit of light potentially on the horizon that maybe wasn't there. And particularly if that investment can come true, it would be huge.
Yeah, and sorry, I completely agree. And like one of the things again for the last few weeks, and I think everybody would agree. Like again, if anybody's talking about John Temple, everybody has, whether it was personal history or knows somebody that knows somebody and has kind of negative thoughts or whatever on him and stuff. And my point to everybody was that I don't care, that everybody needs to, let's give this guy a chance. And his job is to do exactly the points that you're talking about. It is striking deals with creditors, potentially getting more investors, getting jersey sponsors, getting revenue driven, such as the YDC. And I know John Temple no more than I know the man of the moon, but I just think he's the guy that came in. He saved the club from essential liquidation at the time. Let's give him a chance. And from what I can see and things that I've heard and the things that you're referencing there, we're going on an upward trajectory for the first time in a long time in the back end, I feel. And as you said, we're not out of anything, but I think we all need to just kind of roll in behind this, but give them some space. And as we all know, certain things that are happening in the background take some time, can't be pushed and stuff. But from what I hear, it's, things are going positively. And you have to tip your hat to that he's doing things, in my opinion, in a progressive way, in a business sense, understanding, revenue generation, how important that is. And again, like these, you've referenced 3 or 4 things. There's other things happening as well, and I think it's all in the background. And also, what he's done as well is now appointed a manager, obviously given him a 2-year deal, let him talk to players. So he's letting kind of the football people be the football people now in essence, and also he's going to sort things in the background. So from what I can see, and there's no much more than what we can say right now, but I just think a quick hat tip to him, fair play, things seem to be moving. It doesn't mean we're out of the woods, but things just seem to be moving a bit forward. And I don't think any Dundalk fan can ask any more this time from where we were even a month ago.
Yeah, look, I don't think you can lick his arse either. In terms of there will come a point where difficult questions have to be asked, and
I'm not saying
all
that,
for
but
that.
what I'm saying
No,
is that
no, no.
people
But
need to just stop
where
referencing
I'm
him as
going with
being an
that,
idiot or whatever.
yeah, no, where I'm going with that is, I suppose, like a new owner is a bit like a new baby. So every baby born on this earth comes into the world innocent in terms of like they may become a bollocks, but they're not born a bollocks. You may get prejudice, you may hate whatever it is, but you're not born with them. You develop them or whatever, and he comes in with a clean slate. I don't know John Temple personally in terms of I would have met him the guts of 20 years ago, I'd say, in a previous part of my life and previous part of his life. It had nothing to do with football or whatever, and it was more true people, and he just someone who was in the area or whatever. Look, he has involvement with politics, he hasn't or had, and certainly community stuff and stuff like that. And I would have worked with someone who was friends with his and stuff like that, and that's my sole knowledge of the man before this. I don't particularly care. I don't think most people wanting to go for pints with him on a Friday night or whatever that is, but he has made listen, again, communication. Look, he's probably communicated more already than most other owners. I know he's on the panel tomorrow along with Peter Halpin and Ciaran Kilduff, so I presume there'll be questions in their direction as well. But
that's to be applauded at this stage. Like, as you said, we genuinely just haven't had that. And like, again, we're not talking about, as I said, going overboard or looking at he's the savior and all, but it kind of is in an essence. But what I'm saying is, like, I have to give credit where it's due for how things are kind of going in this sense, and being so upfront and honest, even with the interview, and then now acting on things. And I think the acting is more what I'm thinking. When you hear these things coming to fruition, you think, well, fair play. You're a guy that wants to...
I know of it. I won't name him out of respect for me, but I know of at least one person, and possibly others, but certainly one person who has informed me that he's been asked to be on a board. So I haven't had an opportunity to ask John anything on that, for example, but the very fact that there's going to be a board, and this guy in particular is a dyed-in-the-wool Dundalk fan as well. So I know there was a thing about fan representation, but if we get to a point where, and look, there's American investors too, who will be part of this, and that's just reality of the situation. But if we have one or two, I don't know many, like what the final number of that is, but if we have fans on the board, that's to be welcomed, I think, who can report back to other fans and maybe stop. I mean, the unfortunate thing of this, and one thing that probably will get maybe negative headlines, there's going to have to be cuts at the club, massive cuts at the club, through all areas, and maybe John could have handled them a bit more sensitively when he spoke a couple of weeks ago or whatever. But I mean, and that's just a sad reality of it, of any business that has to cut its cloth to I suppose get the scale. And look, there's no bad people up there. So whoever it is, and I wouldn't want to speculate on that, but whoever it is, it's obviously going to be very sad to see anyone lose that association, lose their job, etc. But to be fair to John Temple, and you can, without going into the blame game or anything like that, it wasn't him that put us in this predicament to begin with, that people's jobs were at risk, so look, harsh decisions are going to have to be made. But look, again, I'm not trying to paint this as some rosy picture that Dundalk is suddenly thriving again and we're looking up and we're going to win the league next year. And far from it. But I think,
honestly,
it's only
one step forward is positive for us right now.
Well, it's still less than 2 months ago that there was that sort of D-Day where, I remember I met up with you on the Sunday night and genuinely thinking there was no Dundalk FC tomorrow. And the fact that we have a club got to the end of the season, and look, there's a press conference in tomorrow afternoon or whatever. There's going to be a manager announced, so that at least shows hope or intent or whatever to be competing next year. I think if you were offered that on the 17th of September or whatever it was, I think most people would have taken that scenario. So, listen, is everything perfect? Absolutely not. But I think it's at least going in a direction. And I think on the whole, you always want more, you always want better, you always want bigger, etc. Don't get me wrong. But I think on the whole, I think it has to be largely welcomed.
Right, but we will, sadly for listeners, do a bit of a 2024 Dundalk discussion. But before we do, we will hear from our sponsors, the unit.
Today's episode is powered by the unit, experts in building innovative products for the betting, iGaming, and sports industries. They're the brains behind building innovative products tailored for those who love the game as much as we do. From software that powers up the betting world to platforms that enhance how we engage with our favourite sports, the unit is leading the charge. The unit, a winning team that reminds me of the Kenny era Dundalk in their consistency and results. Proud sponsors of the PressBox podcast. Learn more at theunit.dev.
Yeah. Yeah, I know we were saying about like what we'll do, and we have we've 4 bullet points, so listeners can make their own mind. We've a review of this season. So we've is a high point question mark, low point question mark, best signing, worst signing. And just like as we were saying earlier, like where we go through the low points, there was like I don't know, like now we can kind of laugh because there's kind of it's over, and but like Stephen O'Donnell as a manager, we'd Noel King as a manager, we'd was it Garts and Burnsy as a manager, we've John Daly as a manager, we'd a 10-game ban for a keeper, we'd 15 other keepers playing for us, and nothing could work. We'd the club potentially closing on a Monday 2 months ago. A weird L season, and definitely not something to go through for 20 minutes. But yeah, I don't know if somebody asked you, like, can you kind of surmise the season? It was just like what next? Like nothing would surprise you. Like you'd wake up and again, like I remember at the time when what's the keeper's name? George Shelby. Like, when that happened, okay, like that is mental in the grand scheme of things. A 10-game ban for racism in the League of Ireland and all. And honest to God, that week, you can correct me what it was, something else mental happened that like we didn't even get to talk about that on the podcast, that our keeper had been like banned for 10 games because of this, because something else wild happened. And maybe it was King got appointed or so, I can't remember, but I remember being like, we're not even talking about this. And like it was just one thing after another, and like
I think that's when Noel stepped down or something.
Or something like that happened. But like absolutely wild. And when you look back, like some people will say to me about COVID. Oh, do you remember this thing happened in COVID? And listen, COVID was a shit time for me with the business being closed and stuff like that. And so honestly, like people would say, "Oh, do you remember this thing of COVID?" Now? And my mind was like blank, and I'm like, "No, genuinely can't remember." And there's so much of the season that like you say to me, like, "Do you remember Stephen O'Donnell was manager?" And it's 7-8 months ago max, like, and no, like not really now, dear. Like it's so long ago, like so. I don't know how you and I can't even get into like a worst signing question mark, like absolutely not. Like I could go through a list of boys, like you probably have to give it to Jamie Walker to be fair, but like it's absolutely wild. I do think, and there is 2 points that I had down in a good way, and I think going into the first division, and to be serious just for a sec, I think some of the development of the youth is a huge positive for us, and I genuinely think the young Kyo, I think is it Malloy, the lad that came on the other day, even the likes of Maya were getting a bit more minutes. He's still a young guy, like you can develop these guys a bit more. Even I think Spate was on the bench as well, was he the other night? Yeah. These things can be, and I think that's brilliant. But when I was actually thinking back, and again, it was such a negative whole year in Oriel, and I actually wanted to reference this 2 weeks ago, and I forgot. The best part of the season at Oriel Park for me, the whole season was it was 2 weeks. It was I can't even remember the game, okay, and we were probably losing, let's be honest, and everything's going horrendously. It could have been actually Derry when we got relegated, but the Down syndrome lads that won or came second in the All-Ireland thing or whatever. I don't know who was in Oriel Park that night, but I remember just being like buzzing watching these boys running around the pitch, and they were jumping up,
I think
giving
it
the
was a
crowd
Derry game. Yeah, I
loads.
think it was a
Yeah, I
Derry
think
game.
it was absolutely amazing. Like the boys were loving it and winding up the crowd and throwing things in and like knee sliding and all this sort of crack. And it does make you think like that's kind of what it's about. It was fun. People were loving it. It was entertaining and you could see the excitement on the lads who'd done brilliantly. And we were celebrating them and everybody was applauding with kind of positivity. But I actually couldn't think of another point for me, but I just remember thinking that, like, actually smiling and loving that when the lads were going because most of the other season, I honest to God couldn't tell you.
Rumor has it even scored a few goals in that tournament.
Exactly, and it's funny what that could do for you, like. But no, them boys, and again, congratulations to them because I have to say that it definitely stuck out to me a few weeks ago now that
Because
they were loving it. Like.
I note the bullet points you mentioned that didn't mention goal of the season, and because there was probably about three to choose from, to be fair, a little more, but it was fairly bleak in that regard. No, like to just go back to your point on the youth there, because I don't want to go through Drogheda necessarily, but we should just acknowledge it for a split second. But what I took from the Drogheda game, and look, a scoreless draw just for the record, but decided finished on Friday night. 7 of those were 21 or under.
Yeah.
And we'd replaced the likes of Jada Kiki and Robbie Mahon, who are both 2021 as well. So now some of them may not be here next year in terms of like you're talking Ryan O'Kane finished the game on the pitch. I think that the links to Shells are well documented at this stage, and good luck to him if that's where he ends up or if whatever happens with Ryan. But it kind of give a bit of a glimpse of the future. Like if you can keep, for example, like I mentioned Horgan Stain, who could be a real leader for them. Maybe keep, I don't know, like a John Mountney around or whatever. And obviously John has to weigh up his future like everyone else. But if you can sort of build on that, because for me, you reference, and these are some of the high points, not to be all negative, but like Sean Keogh, like I think it was his 10th start in the league. For me, he was probably our best player on the pitch on Friday. He was probably our best player on the pitch against Shamrock Rovers the week before. And you can see like he was someone, and I remember talking to Stephen O'Donnell about this, it feels about 4 years ago now, but like at the start of the year, he wasn't someone on the radar. I mean, you look at academy teams and again, this is probably something we could have done a bit more, maybe get a couple of academy. I know we did have Tiernan on here in the past and like going back a few years ago where, and he was probably low to fully mention people, but you'd say, like even off the record, keep an eye on this fella, he is a chance or he is or whatever. Sean Keogh wasn't, but his development has been stellar. And then you factor in, just to give him a mention, like TJ Malloy Murray, like 15 years, 6 months, 28 days, the youngest player in the club's history by exactly 4 months, beating Vinnie Leonard's record. And the only reason Vinnie wasn't in the squad was because he was away with the Irish under 17. So, TJ was the Irish top scorer when they won the Victory Shield just, I think, 3 weeks earlier. Sean Spate was captain of that side and scored in the tournament as well, as you mentioned, was in it. Even people like Owen Kenny, if you look at, he's now played about 30 odd games for Dundalk at a senior level, like that's invaluable experience. And look, some of these you may face a fight to hold on to, but equally you can sell the point, like it will be good for the youth because like even as good as the whole Stephen Kenny period was, if there was a criticism of it, we didn't develop anyone, we didn't bring anyone through. And I appreciate that's harder to do when you're successful, but like, and I know it's a different level or stage or whatever, but you look at your Man Cities, your Liverpools, your Uniteds, they do bring youth players into the first team, despite their resources, etc. Now you could say maybe their resources help bring them to the youth academy in the first place, but it will definitely make the academy more attractive if for people to look at TJ Malloy Murray, and I don't know what the future holds for this kid, but people can now look at him and say, oh, Jesus, he's 15 and a half. He's getting a chance.
Yeah.
Callum Woods was travelled with the squad the other day as well. He played for Northern Ireland in the Victory Shield, but he came through Key Celtic. People now look at these of that age range and say, well, look, it could be me. I could get it. I could get. So even if you're like a 15, 16, 7-year-old kid, you could be saying, I could play 10 matches for Dundalk FC next season. And regardless of where they are on the table, that's, invaluable in terms of your development. So I think that's a big thing. And I think one maybe benefit to there's always a silver lining, I suppose. There probably will be more focus on the academy now, so that is a good thing. High points, low points. The whole season was nearly a low point, wasn't it? Like the whole escapade, it was hard to keep hard to find any positives really. Like the one thing for me that hung over us like a bad smell all year, and maybe this goes back to previous years, the recruitment was absolutely diabolical. And this is no disrespect to some of the players who signed or whatever, but like I remember there was a famous Alex Ferguson quote the year Blackburn won the Premier League. It was 1995, and Cantona was suspended for like 9 months for the Kung Fu attack. And I remember when Cantona was out, he said, I think they lost the league by a point or something, and he says, you'll never convince me that Cantona at some point wouldn't have produced the magic to turn maybe a draw into a win or a defeat into a draw or whatever. And like, if we just had kept Patrick Hooban, and even Nathan Shepherd, I don't want to go over maybe necessarily old ground, but even like Pat, and look, he's in a cup final this weekend. I don't know if he'll play just with injury or whatever, and that is something he maybe has struggled with at times this season. But only Brandon Kavanagh, in terms of goals and assists, had a greater goal contribution this season. He did finish joint top scorer in the league with 14 goals. And again, what he would have brought, like even someone like Jamie Gullen, who, let's be honest, struggled at times in terms of goals, didn't actually score in Oriel Park. All the evidence we discussed this throughout the year. Gullen played better with someone up top alongside him, we felt. And what would he have been like with a Hoban maybe not knocking balls down to him or whatever? And then at the other end, the problems we had with the keepers were, really cataclysmically bad, because we had so much issues with them. We gave up so many soft goals. I think the defense at times wasn't actually bad in terms of, if you look at, I think that particularly that back four. And again, it feels like about 3 years ago now, but when we got that back four of Archie Davies, Zach Johnson, Andy Boyle, and Zach Bradshaw, it was decent.
Yeah.
It was decent. I think it was as good as anything in the league at a certain point. But again, keep Nathan Shepherd, who wanted to sign. I think egos got in the way of that because there was an issue with his agent rather than Nathan. You don't have to like every agent, but I think a player ultimately paid for maybe not wanting to deal with a particular individual, rightly or wrongly. But I think Dundalk paid the price for that. Peter Cherry came back to the club. I still think he was probably our best option at times. Didn't play. And look, John Daly's entitled to that. But even, the
young fella that played, by the way, he was probably one of the better options, actually.
Sean Malloy, he did quite well. Now, again, didn't see maybe enough from to judge him over a longer period, but he definitely kept one clean sheet in the Sligo game in Oriel just before the break, which we won, and I think he only conceded one in Talca Park on his debut, which you wouldn't definitely fault him for. It was a bit of magic by Jarvis to put it on a plate for John Martin to score the winner. But and again, and it's probably been because let's be honest, we're dealing with the Stephen O'Donnell, and it probably ultimately cost him his job here. But like going back to even previous seasons, we were bringing in players like Hayden Muller and Louis Ansley and people like this, and again, no disrespect to those players, but we had people like Emmanuel Adebayoga in the squad who couldn't get a run out. And you're asking who's had the better career trajectory. Like, ironically, I know you were in Scotland last month. He said he scored the winner in the game or something, but he went to Drogheda. It was obviously superb. Got a move to Norwich. It was a 90 grand they got. Their sell-ons and that, etc. He's on loan up and playing SPL football now. So, and again, you see it where I think you touched on Jamie Walker there, who we haven't seen since March in terms of it on a field. And again, this isn't the young lad's fault, but we paid a transfer fee for him, and he hasn't literally kicked the ball for us in so long. But like within that, you had people like Sean Keogh in your club who maybe I mean, which would you rather for next season as your left back, Jamie?
I suppose the problem for Daly or King or whoever O'Donnell was signing these boys at this stage, I don't know who was signing who, that ultimately we got relegated. But I do, like, as I think Brian Ainscough would have said at the start of the year, our aim was Europe. So are you really going to risk all these young fellas? Hindsight is 2020.
And to be fair to the people who were there at that time and are gone now, and I'd love to ask them this, but even things like Zach Johnson, for me, was our best player this season. I know he only played, I think it was 18 matches. He's gone since the 4th of July or something. But for me, he was the one you'd say was, for me anyway, was the standout. And Jack Johnson didn't play at all in the first 4 games. I'm like, what are you looking at in training, lads? Because this is a guy who, for me, has the ability to go, or I know there's probably no shame not getting in the Sunderland first team, although he has played first team for Sunderland since he went back. But and just not to put it all on them, but we brought in 9 players in the summer window. Now it was a bit haphazard, but things again, Felix Goddard didn't work. Scott McGill barely featured, Norman Garbutt barely featured, Josh O'Connor, whatever that was about. I think TJ Malloy has as many minutes as them. But there was people brought in. I don't know. I don't know. But my point being, there was players brought in who, and look, it's not there. This is no disrespect against these players, but they made no real impact on an already underperforming side. To be fair, maybe Dan Pike was decent. I'd say, like he had big boots to fill in terms of Archie Davies' replacement. Dervin probably was a first team regular, etc. But like outside of that, the players we brought in made little to no impact at all. Bobby Faulkner again on loan, and look, I know Bobby had an injury towards the end of the year and stuff, but like all these decisions, because and the one that really baffled me, and again, no disrespect to the lad, but like you're making a conscious decision at the start of the year for whatever reason, and again, maybe this will someday come out in an interview, whatever, but like you're letting your all-time leading goal scorer go in Patrick Hoban, and you're keeping someone like Cameron Elliott who got 1 goal last season. Like I appreciate with every signing, and you go to any level
over in Scotland now, but he's flying.
He is, but maybe that's just his level, and nothing wrong with that. But what I'm saying is there was no evidence on the basis of 2023 to suggest that Cameron Elliott was going to turn into a goal machine in 2024.
Yeah,
and that again, that's not his fault. But I think, look, any club can get a signing wrong. You look at Man United are obviously a team in the news at the minute, like any players like Anthony, and you get signings who might look on paper and this could work out, and it just doesn't for whatever reason, and there could be a million things we don't know about behind the scenes that explain that. But to then give him a new deal, like write it off and say, look, you're not up to this level. You only got 1 goal last season, but to then give him a new deal, to give people like Sam Durant a new deal and have him like uninvolved. I don't even know where Sam Durant is in the world right now, to be honest with you. But TJ Malloy came on wearing his number the other night. So, but like, again, just things that sort of baffled, but equally we paid the price for all those decisions. So yeah,
I don't think we'll have such a problem with it this year, but like one of the things that we would discuss through the years, and this is through multiple years, that my issue was, and you reference it, guys like Johnson and stuff. We just went to that British loan market and got decent lads. Let's be honest, because it's timing and stuff like that. So you can get a lad who's maybe not in the fray in January, let's say, and they'll come in and they'll do it, but they all go back in July. So you're literally starting again in July, or your half of your team gets decimated, and it could be the core of your team. As you said, the guys we lost in most of the summers were quality players, quality individuals that were genuinely could have driven us forward. And I think we need to just, like, I get it. Now, the first division is going to be a bit different. I don't think we're going to have them issues, but like, it was just, I agree with you. I thought like the recruitment policy in general was poor. Like, and the fact that like a lot of this stuff was just accepted was poor. And I think so many other guys, I remember even like, Mark Connolly. And again, now that was a different thing because I know it was about wages, but like, Mark Connolly was like literally our best player at this time, and we're giving him away to us at that time, a title rival and stuff like that. And just everything it kind of went from that level to now, right? We're bringing in Zach Johnson, but he has to go. And as you said, by a mile, he was one of our best players. And they would have known that this is what's happening. Sunderland delighted to get him minutes and different things, and it's definitely benefited them. But like, we're always going to lose, and we're always then chasing the bargain basement come the summer. And I don't know if stats would ever show this, but like, do we consistently dip maybe after summer? I don't know, but that was something that, yeah, recruitment, I just thought was so ad hoc. There was no long-term objective. So you, like, first of all, you said, and he was a manager, but Ciaran Kilduff got a 2-year deal. We really went out, recruited guys, thought about this. Like, you give guys this 2-year deal. It's none of this, 1+ whatever. Like, and there was other deals, as you said, like was 1+ whatever the terminology would be. But whoever, some of these players just said, no, I'm out, and they went somewhere. Whereas like we had no control over some of these contracts either. Some of the better players. So sometimes you just have to invest and say. And sometimes you win and sometimes you lose, as Manchester United will tell you example. So it doesn't mean the top or bottom level, but you need to be better. And I think given longer term contracts and recruiting the right people that want to be there rather than just trying to ad hoc get lads in for 6 months is just a better way to go. Now, I think right now, going into the first division, I think we're going to be in a bit of a different sphere in that sense. But I thought in the Premier Division, a lot of our recruitment of wild 6-month deals and doing it all again come July is ultimately what would have potentially cost us and really brought us down, actually, because you've no team cohesion, you've no team bonding, etc., etc. Lads don't know each other, don't know each other's names. Definitely, by the way, I was with you after one of the games this year, okay, and you were doing an interview and I was just waiting for you or something, and it was one of the players was talking to you and was saying something. It was either about Garrett's or Burnsy. And you were like, oh, Garrett's, do you think he'd get the job? Or something like that. And they were like, who's Garrett's? Or who's Burnsy? Like, and this is a fucking player, man, that was playing on the pitch and he hadn't a clue who the lad's name was that's managing them. So, like, you can't be having that sort of messing. I think you need to build stuff from taking the odd loan. And that's what that market should be. Oh, God, we just need to fill a kind of gap. As you say, we've a right back injury, get somebody in for cover. I don't think you build your core on these kind of loan deals. And if we get back to the Premier League next season, maybe we could look at that. But I think that definitely has to change.
Yeah, like when you look at it, like, and it's funny, we are going to move on and maybe give it like 2 minutes to the rest of the league or whatever. Not that I know we mainly talk about Dundalk, but we were obviously watching Friday to get the whole country was watching, even though I was in Drogheda and had the game on my phone on RT Player or whatever. And it's mad to think like Rovers could have, like, 5-6 minutes ago, Rovers were top of the table in the live table, and ultimately what you could say cost them. And it's amazing to look back on the opening night in Tala when we got a 1-1 draw. He thought this is gonna be wonderful, right?
Unbelievable.
And that was like, we would have considered that a great point or whatever. It was match day 12 when we got our first win. under Noel King of all. You couldn't, like, if you tried to script this at the start, you're going to take 12 games to get a win, and in the 11 matches that we didn't win, we scored 3 goals in 11 matches, and then we finally beat Bows. Actually drew with Shells after that, and ultimately, like, you can go through the ins and outs of it, but ultimately what got Shells over the line above maybe Pats, Derry, Rovers, obviously, they fucked up less than anyone else against us. They drew an Oriole 0-0 as part of that amazing eight games at home in a row where we didn't concede. But that was effectively what won Shells the league. If you want to go into it now, unfortunately, I think we were probably getting a bit of a flow going in terms of, as I say, that back four became decent even before he left, and I probably spoke slightly ill of him, and I didn't mean to, but Hayden Muller went into midfield just before he left, and him and Paul Doyle were on an unlikely midfield partnership, but it worked. Yeah. We were actually playing all right, and then, you know, go back to, and it's still our last win, that 4-2 over Drogheda in Oriel in July, and you think
that our last win.
Yeah, massive attempt. Right. So there's actually 13 matches now, 13 matches in all competitions. So Poirier Dervin, right, who's going to be here next year, so he might have a chance. Poirier Dervin made his debut the week after that off the bench against Drogheda in the Cup. Dervin hasn't won a match in a Dundalk jersey yet.
And funny enough, I actually rate him. Do you know? I thought he was actually one of the better players.
Yeah, it's absolutely nothing against him at all. Absolutely nothing against him at all. And like, again, it was just like, again, it's 13 matches without a win. So many of them were tight affairs. Like you go back to, like, I think there was 2 matches in that, Galway away, Galway and Oriel, and the Bows game, which I missed, and the Derry game where we were finally put down. But they were the only games with 2 goals in it. Everything else had a goal in it or a draw. But like, just our inability to take chances and score, and a few big decisions at crucial times as well. Like for all they deserved. Pats finished the season like a steam train and got Europe, which looked massively unlikely, but should have had a penalty at the end of that. Could have been a 2-2 draw. Definitely should have had a penalty in Waterford where we lost 2-1. It would have been a red card had it been given. You know, it's a different game. You know, it's an absolute different game. And a few big things like that really, really went against us. We could talk about refereeing, but I'm not going to. But yeah, it was a mad old season. Like, and even like, fair play to Shells and winning it. Like, you have to say well done to the champions. And you know, the 5 of our ex-players, you know, Sean Gannon with another league title for whatever that's worth. But
unbelievable.
It is. I joke when I say that, like, but it's an incredible record. But like, they only improved by 3 points. Like, most teams, if you say you're going to be 3 points better off than you were the following season, it's not going to make a blind bit of difference unless you're maybe, you know, second in the table, and maybe that's enough to get first or whatever. But you definitely don't think it's going to be 3 points going to be enough to take you from fourth to first. So a really incredible, and maybe that's what makes the whole thing a little bit more hard to stomach about actually going down, is the fact that, you know, with the exception of maybe Sligo blew us away 5-0, there was a couple of heavy away defeats. The Derry one 4-1, I think it was, when ultimately cost Stephen O'Donnell his job, and a 4-1, which I think actually was, it was actually Noel King's last game in charge in the RSC. Like, those few isolated results aside, there was no one hammering us or, you know, hockeying us out week to week, and that was the hard part to take about it all, that you weren't going out and, you know, massively showing yourself up, but just.
But sadly, as you reference, I think you have a Pat Hoban. Listen, we weren't doing anything, but we weren't going down in that sense, and I think that's the difference as a goal scorer. I think regardless of whatever people want to talk about points differences of the league in general, that the standards have slipped. I don't think so. I think teams are better. They're better coached. It's a harder league to, like, the days of somebody winning by 20 points, I think, are gone. And that's to do with the credit of the other teams. There's a bit more money in the league. There's better coaching and stuff. So the standards are better, that teams are able to take off points from each other. But with that,
and you mentioned just Sean Malloy earlier. So up until Friday, he kept our last clean sheet, which was that win over Sligo in Oriel, June the 13th, the last game before the break. Like, that was, so we didn't keep a clean sheet after the break in 16 matches in all competitions up until Friday night. So,
but it does wonders for the league, to kind of just go back to the league. I think the general, how it finished, RTE having it on 2 stations and stuff, and there being a bit of banter, it now being the biggest LOI game and watched. I think it was 400,000 people watched it on Friday. People are talking about the league. There's the large scale infrastructure fund now that the likes of Bowes and Sligo and Wexford and Rovers have got, which is going to do amazing things for the league. I always talk about the infrastructure. Build it and they will come. Like, Rovers had 10,000 people at the game the other day. Bowes have lads kicking doors down to try to get tickets and stuff. You've seen the money, and we were talking to guys from Sligo Rovers last night, and like, it's going to do wonders for them. They're going to be the guys, like, by the way, if we ever do go back to Europe, we could be having to use their pitch. They're going to be, what is UEFA?
Hopefully not.
Yeah, but you know what I mean? Like,
Category 3, yeah. Category
3, sorry. And like, even Wexford, I seen all their designs and stuff, and they were kind of smaller budgeted one, to be fair, but like, it's all positive. And again, like, ultimately, we started this podcast 4 years ago, and it was for essentially for mates, probably at the time during the COVID crisis, to talk about football, but also like you've reported on the League of Ireland for 30 years at this stage, for all I know. I had a League of Ireland website,
23 this month.
Yeah, like, so we love the League of Ireland. We always wanted it to grow, and it is now, and it's lovely. People are talking about it,
and we're going to.
Well, and we're good now, of course, but like,
which is it is the hard part to take of it all. That like it is suddenly cool and sexy.
We'll be back. Things go up and down. Cork were down. They're back. Like, it's
hopefully, hopefully. But it does feel like, listen, I'd be the first. There's never a good time to get relegated. Don't get me wrong, but it feels like this is a particularly bad time when you factor in everything like the UEFA solidarity funding and stuff like that coming in for, like, that's not going to go to maybe Premier Division clubs. And you talk about, like, you look at someone like Bowes, and I appreciate it'll be probably 2028 at best before the stadium's up and running or operational, and that's if everything goes according to plan, which you can never bank on. But like, if they suddenly have a 6,000 seater stadium, like, better facilities in terms of, so straight away, just like that leap of and it mightn't seem like a lot, but they're basically selling out Oriel Park as well as current Dalymount Park every week, because they've roughly 4,000 in the gates every week at the minute. They have no reason to suggest they won't sell out 6,000. It's probably already actually too small for their, before it's built, but that's a separate argument. But what I mean is, we're now trying to compete with clubs like that who, just on gate receipts, which are still one of the biggest incomes for teams, it's very, very hard to, like, again, you mentioned, we were talking to a couple of Sligo lads last night, like, I think their away end now is going to cater for 1,000 fans. So like, they were in a situation, I think they were saying, where they had to turn Pats fans away the other night, because there just wasn't room for all that wanted to go. And it was a big game for Pats in terms of qualifying for Europe or whatever, and there's a buzz behind that club at the moment. But you are sort of falling behind in that regard now. Look, I know Dundalk did look into the plans at least, but unfortunately, where we
just
were
weren't
in
in a
terms
place
of,
to do it right
well, ultimately, what kiboshed the whole thing was the fact that the level of debt, you have to have money in the bank effectively to apply for these things. Now even there is other clubs, and Drogheda being our nearest neighbours, obviously missed out. But there's now a sort of reserve list and there's a priority list. So I think, look, it was a disappointing, and I don't want to get political on this, but it was a disappointing, I suppose, series of grants for Loud, because not alone did Drogheda miss out, but the GAA Stadium in Dundalk also missed out. But I believe they're both priority from FAI and GAA in terms of next time round. And if there is a sort of, there's this new use it or lose it thing, but also there will be more funding down the line. And certainly, look, probably a general election on the horizon. It's as good as time any maybe to seek that sort of support and commitment that, we do need. Like, to be fair, I know Joanna Byrne in Drogheda was asked about this week, and she was actually quite nice about it. Like, obviously, look, Drogheda would have loved to be in there, but she did say, like, we are probably ahead of where we need to be in terms of, I think that the land acquisition is still to be done and stuff like that. So, it probably gives them time. But, like, in terms of, you're talking about two massive big projects in Louth that is now ahead of Oriel if we ever get our shit together, as well as everything else. Because Galway were another club that missed out, and that's just in football. There's always going to be. I know it was a Basketball Ireland were unhappy about missing out on funding as well in this. So look, the biggest takeaway for me on all this was, it's not so much the year just gone that really hurts, but, like, you have to say, why were we not doing this over a much longer period? I know, like, Jerry Matthews did get money towards the YDC, going back, whatever, like, that must be 15 years ago now, or maybe more, and we haven't looked to embrace that, and for all our on-field successes, and they're brilliant, and the memories, and look, things like Alkmaar are naturally going to come up tomorrow because Ciaran Kilduff's back and stuff like that. But, in one day, Sligo made more money than we ever made in Europe, and it will have longer lasting impact. So, I know we joke about it. You thought Sligo would go down this year or whatever. They may go down next year, whatever. But at the end of this whole period, and I actually text Tommy Higgins, the chairman, just to congratulate him, on getting the funding. And he said to me, like, he says, look, a lot of hard work. This project began with us in 2021. And he says the plan is to have it fully finished by 2028, which is Sligo's centenary year. And, like, what a way to celebrate your centenary, regardless of what division you're in and how competitive you are and all that. But as a centre of sort of excellence, for want of a better word, for football in Sligo in the Northwest, it's amazing to have something like that, and they're going to have it, and it shows vision and looking into the future. I mean, 2021 to 20, like 7 years out from your centenary, you're planning these things and you're bringing it to fruition, and they are to be admired in so many ways, and unfortunately, from 2021 to here, how many bloody owners have we had? We can't think about next year, never mind 5 years from now. And look, at some point we do need that sort of for want of a better term, that sort of continuity, or that sort of, like, if people come and go, the longer term sort of project or structure continues. Whether John Temple's the man to spearhead that, whether it's something that the trust does, if it gets, well, it is off the ground, but you know what I mean, like, properly up and established. I don't know, but there's a lot of lessons to be learned from the last year as well, from a Dundalk perspective as well. Not just the last year, but we've fallen so far behind. We got so complacent. We weren't doing the very basics, that any business should do to bring in money. And again, I don't want to completely harp on the past, but you mentioned doing this pod 4 years. I'm banging on about it for 4 years, that we should be doing this, we should be doing that, we should be, again, if people had been honest about where this club was in terms of financials and whatever, well, maybe we're 2 years down the road with a trust and we've a couple of million in the bank.
Yeah.
If buts and maybes, I know, but those mistakes can't be allowed to happen again. And like, to see even a club like Wexford, with all due respect from you're 100% right, what they're proposing to do, like and I'm only looking at the models, brilliant, brilliant. And they're giving something like the young kids, the people who mightn't play for your first team for 12, 13 years, but you're giving them something to aspire to. I want to play there someday. I want to be there. I want to, everything. We weren't even having halftime matches at certain periods of, like, bring out schoolboys teams on an artificial pitch. No excuse. Like, but yeah, right. To go back to it, the league has. It's brilliant to see, and even things like, I suppose, even the cup final, just to give it a mention, like the weekend, it probably wouldn't have been deemed a sexy final in terms of no Dublin team involved from like, if you listen to what brings the crowd or whatever, but like, tickets are flying, like it could actually surpass the record set last year. So I mean, it's everything's on the up, and unfortunately Dundalk have been on the down, but hopefully, like, at some point you have to say stop. Let's go on. Like, let's turn this ship around, and hopefully we're at that point. If there's any, if there's any further to fall, I don't know if there's a club here. So hopefully we have reached our rock bottom, and the way is up, I suppose.
Yeah. Where are we now? Boom, boom, boom. All right, there's a few just a few others to get by, and we'll just get on to the end of the show for any guys still listening, because God knows it's now 5 to 12. I'm pretty sure we logged on at 10. So
as I always say to you, it's not 5 to 12 for the people listening.
Yeah, true.
Or maybe it is. Maybe it is.
So we've a reminder anyway. Yeah, so for people booking indoor pitches, they're open every day now from 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. You can get on to Nita in the club. They're gonna actually get a online booking portal set up soon, but as of now you can just contact Nita. The Late Night League Youth Diversion Programme, in association with the Community Garda and Dundalk based youth workers, get underway at the YDC this Thursday, and are going to run each Thursday in November from 6 to 7. So you can contact Mick Neville on that. His number is actually 086 609 5463. As you referenced earlier, actually, I think we have to give Vinnie Leonard a shout out as well. He helped the Irish 17s into the elite phase of the UEFA 17s Championship on Monday. The club also announced the relaunch of the Three Little Birds school football program booklet. So it was actually introduced after a successful pilot in April. It was created by Dundalk's Aoife Burns and Tom O'Connor in partnership with the FAI's Futsal in the Yard. And program now receives support from Healthy Ireland's Not Around Us campaign. The program reached over 700 students in 17 Loud schools. Brings football to life, I suppose, for kids. It promotes teamwork, respect, and a positive mental attitude as well. So this year, Not Around Us introduced a new element, encouraging a smoke-free environment around youth through activities like colouring contests and mini matches. Students are going to learn the importance of smoke-free spaces while building their football skills. So you can get more information on the club's website. As well, the Shedside Army are having a table quiz on Thursday week on November 14th in the Lily White Lounge, and I suppose that's another good cause, and I suppose to be promoted as well. So the doors are at 7 p.m. and it's going to get underway at about 8. A team of 4 is only a tenner a person. Not to forget as well, I know over the last few weeks with meetings and even our podcast and other podcasts, the trust was referenced and plenty of information given. So they're actually going to hold their first AGM in the Lisdoo on Monday the 18th of November, when its constitution is going to be debated and the first committee is going to be formed. It's strictly open to members only, so you can sign up via the Dundalk FC Supporters Trust social pages, or you can email them at membership@dfcsupporterstrust.ie. I suppose we should give the live show of the lads a shout as well. I see you're deleting the name, but it's the Town End, not the other reference you had there. So the lads are doing actually a live show.
It was only the 1903. I wasn't calling them anything.
Oh yeah, sorry, it wasn't actually a slagging on them, but what is he talking about here? But yeah, the lads in the town end are doing a kind of their last like kind of live show thing on Friday and stuff, and I believe you're going to make an appearance as well. And I know
Jumping
Mark,
ship, jumping ship. I believe the
Mark,
pay is better in Ravensdale.
Mark in Black Mountain Studios are putting it on, and I know that Dave Keenan and John Mountney and stuff, and maybe more. I don't know, but again, that'll be something interesting for people to listen to on Friday as well. Again, there's underage roundup. It's a quick one today. It's in association with Jerry McNamee, as always. So on Saturday, the women's 17s drew 3-3 away to Mayo FC with a brilliant comeback as goals from Aoife Fanning, Jennifer Freeman, and a stoppage time goal from Kira Brady saw them come from 3-0 down with 14 minutes remaining to take a point. This Saturday, the women's 17s are at home to Pats at 2 p.m. So I felt I've spoken quite a lot there reading out them. So
give me the underage. Go on, give me the underage.
I literally just referenced the underage, but and also I have to give credit to somebody else who said I always was quite depressed talking about the underage for whatever reason. So I always try now put a bit of a chirp in my step talking about it because rightly so we should be promoting that at a higher level. So we wanted to give people Wednesday mornings and the rest of the weeks next year some time back. So this is actually going to be the end of the press box on a weekly basis for us. So as we discussed earlier, it's 4 years in the making. Lots of lonely Tuesday nights and Wednesday morning editing, long days, great times, stressful times, fun. I suppose, but before I ask you, any of your thoughts through the years, we've done this for 4 years, and again, there's lots of cost as anyone that does a podcast. So I just through the years we've had guys like Zoma, Fifes, Player Fit, Malone Financial. The unit, current sponsors, McNamee Consultants, Mullins Takeaway. Anyone else I've missed, I genuinely apologize, but the guys that have genuinely looked after us through the years, we appreciate very much. Couldn't have done it without them. So generous. We try to give back to them in the sense there was, I reference Mark doing something with the guys in the town end in his studios, but actually when we did our live show in the Spirit Store, which was a huge highlight for us, we sold out the Spirit Stores. It was actually the first ever podcast done in the Spirit Store, and we sold it out. But Mark actually kindly did the kind of sound and the sound engineering, and was able to put us in files and stuff for us for things that we would have no clue on. So a big shout out to Mark for that as well. And my wife Anya and your wife Haley, who have to listen to this every week and are not happy about it, will be very, very happy to have Tuesday evenings to themselves now. And yeah, I'll let you kind of have your say and maybe some of your highlights of it as well, because I think like everything, things just come to an end. But again, 4 good years. And it's just sad, maybe to an extent, that it comes to an end. But I think both of us will agree these things, especially this year, and with nothing to do with relegation. This was decided a long time ago that we'll definitely be stopping the weekly show before we got relegated. So just for anyone that says just because we're going down that we're not doing it, this was kind of decided probably a few months ago.
Yeah. Yeah, so highlights. I'm thinking this is one that not being on this next Tuesday is definitely one. No, like look, when I think this was your brainchild, for want of a better term, and it probably did spawn out of COVID primarily because you were probably at a loose end and a lot of time on your hands to give something like probably new and exciting or whatever. Like that, I appreciate there are, and I'm a fan of both other Dundalk podcasts, to be fair, and to do. I think there's people always laugh maybe at 3 Dundalk podcasts, but I think they have their little niches or whatever and their importance, and they all offer something a little different. And But yeah, for me anyway, I suppose it just has been. It probably took a lot of convincing. I probably wasn't meant to be on this every week to begin with anyway, and then you get into something, and I've never been one to sort of half-ass anything in terms of like if I'm in, I'm in, and I'll give it my best. And look, maybe my best isn't good enough at times or whatever, but that's a separate argument. But I probably needed a little convincing to do this year alone, and very early in the year, I think it probably doesn't suit my life to a certain extent as well, in terms of just I know we've often spoke we could change day or whatever, but just like I'm up at we're recording. I'm actually not tomorrow as it turns out, but normally I'm up and away at 4:30 in the morning on a Tuesday. You're getting back and away up at 4:30 in the morning on a Wednesday, possibly finishing this at 1 in the morning or something. So it just became an absolute bane. Look, some people would have enjoyed certain episodes, some people wouldn't. Probably more than I definitely would have liked it. There's probably been long periods of me talking or whatever. All I've probably ever tried to do, but in the written thing, which I'm probably weighing up as well, truth be told, is try and keep fans informed. And it's like some people still associate like this is my full-time job. It's not. It takes up an enormous amount of time. Like even things like, and you're entering, and I've always hated the off season for like but like you could spend 3, 4, 5, 6 hours on phone calls, like getting a one-liner that like, oh, we're signing Daryl Horgan, and you build up a lot of connections and whatever, and it's great. But even today, like the likes of the club putting out the new manager thing, geez, my phone was exploding. Do you know who it is? Do you know who it is? And I actually did, but I couldn't say it, and it was awkwardness. So I'm at a point where I probably just want to get back to enjoying the football. I've no regrets in terms of like, listen, I probably got in a bit of conflict with the club at times over certain things, and you can weigh them up. I think I was proven wrong on some of the big things, or sorry, proven right, sorry, on some of the big things that there was issues on over the years, including finances and all that.
But you know, I
Um,
have to jump in here as well for a point, and more so you as a genuine journalist of the club, and like ultimately I'm a fan who does a podcast, and that's really my input. But what I would say is more so on you, but I include myself on this. Through the years, you know, we've got known as the depressed box, as negative, as this and that, and fine, whatever. But what I would say is when you talk to people that really feel about the club is what we did is we were honest. We genuinely said what we felt, maybe sometimes not to good measure, as up to recently, people still not being happy with some of the things that we say, but it was real. And do you know what? We can leave here, in my opinion, with our head held high. Did we get everything right or whatever? No, but there was no way, there was no pandering to clubs, ownerships, whoever in that sense. I think even in your journalism, I know you will get some abuse in different ways for different things. But again, I say this as your friend as well. You do this in no way of benefit, and I know that there's no financial benefit in this game, like you know, but you
no.
do that in as a benefit to the club and or for the fans of the club. And I think people, if you do jack everything in, people will miss that, by the way, because you know you were the contact really to release things in that sense. And again, I kind of let you come back in, but I have to really let the listeners know from our side, we never really had to get to have this conversation, but there was never an agenda in any way, shape, or form. If you asked us an opinion on what do you think of these signings, what do you think of the club as a whole, and if we had anything that was constructively criticism or just downright hammering of a scenario, it was how we felt, and that was what it was. And I think always it was for the potential betterment of the club. Some of the things that we would have said came to fruition. And not just like stuff like finances, and where there was ideas and different things, and people, oh yeah, well, maybe that was actually the right thing to do. But what I will say is, and I reference probably you on more side because you do the journalism as well. everything that was there that was said was honest, and I think we can always kind of hold our head high in that, and have no agenda, and always it was for the future betterment of the club. Any of our views was always just trying to make things better.
Yeah, like listen, yeah, I appreciate you annoy people sometimes when you say that, but that was genuinely like you're trying to point out improvements, you're trying to steer it away from like uh, uh and I think we all like being right, let's be honest, but I took no pleasure in being right about like you get accused of everything from you're just in it for clickbait and blah blah blah. But like when I was saying, we're hemorrhaging cash, like let's call a stop to it. Like it wasn't for the sake of saying it; it was because we were actually hemorrhaging cash. And look how we got there. And I'm not going to go into that now. Is a side point, but like the future of the club was very much threatened. And again, my only aim, and as I say, the first time I wrote on the Dundalk game was 23 years ago. That's month in the Democrat, Dundalk and Longford actually, and all I've ever tried, well, all I've ever tried to do though is just keep people informed and listen to. Like, a lot of it's my opinion. You're completely entitled to do it. I think if I have a regret, maybe of the podcast, is that I love chatting to people. I never wanted to be this, and I'm not saying I am, but like a spokesperson. I'm conscious of the fact that there's 160 odd episodes of me doing a lot of talking and stuff, and it's only been trying to maybe fill people in for one. Even tonight, you go back to the early part of the show where I'm kind of saying some of the things that might be coming down in terms of off the field and the new managerial setup and that. And look, by the time some people listen to that, maybe a lot of that's out there anyway. But it's just been all about just sort of keeping people informed and you get on the wrong side of the club at times. But like I even go back to like I wish we could have maybe done a few more of those things where you chat to people, because you get another perspective, and maybe having a few more guests, or invariably, and it's now after midnight on a Tuesday night, Wednesday, and this isn't out of the ordinary. You can't
hard to
ask
get
someone
boys at that time.
Yeah, and it's just getting the two of us together, and like you're running the business, and you've other stuff going on in your life, and I've other stuff going on, and that's fine. And but like I'd like to think that I was always sort of honest, and like, listen, you don't have to agree with my opinion. That's fine. I'm not saying that, but like in terms of like, I remember when I got in a few scrapes with the clubs, like one of them was, and we've had him on in Andy Burton, like whereas probably did a warning thing about like the direction. I think was it be careful what you wish for, in terms of was the article, and fell out because I was saying I was worried about the direction the club was going with signings. And I reflected on that recently, because it was the 5-year anniversary of that title win under Vinnie Perth, where we beat Rovers 3-2 in Oriel, and I was looking back at the team. I just pulled it up here actually when I was thinking about it, and like our team that night when we won the league, or
Don't
our
sicken
last
me either, by the way.
our last league, but it was Rodgers in goal, Gannon, Cleary, Hoare, Massey was the back four. Chris Shields, Robbie Benson, Jamie McGrath, Patrick McElhenney, Michael Duffy, and Patrick Hoban. And our subs that come off the bench that night were Sean Murray, Daniel Kelly, and Georgie Kelly. Jesus. And my point was like, there's no evidence, and it hasn't changed since, that you go outside the league that you'll get success in terms of, I'm saying one or two, but we went in this mad direction of signing players, and this isn't trying to be racist or anti-Irish or anything like that, but it is a fact, and I give me examples at that time that that with the very few exceptions, there's no real record of players from outside this league ever coming in and setting it alight. And I think if you reflect on this season, maybe the likes of Will Jarvis done really well, but primarily, and you look at the team of the year, it's primarily an Irish team, and you look at the Shells team, it's honest League of Ireland players, and again, we were talking last night about, like, I remember playing, we played Finn Harps in Oriel early enough in the 2021 season. I think Jim Magilton might have been in charge at the time or something, and they beat us, and it was the first time they'd beat us since Jesus was a child or whatever. And like Mark Coyle absolutely ran the show for him that night in midfield, and they were the sort of players I think we should have been signing and identifying as opposed to, again, with all due respect, but like that was the year of Zahibo. Do you know what I mean? Who we still owe money to, ironically. So like, you know, again, people don't necessarily always have to agree with you. We've tried, to be fair, we have tried. We've had a few, obviously, we mentioned the John Temple interview earlier, and people don't have to agree with everything said on these or whatever. We had I think the biggest before that was an interview with Bill. That was really painstaking, where I think it was like 3 hours of audio with a lot of pauses and stuff. So to make that in any way listenable was quite the editing feat. We did do, other things. I always reflect back, and I remember doing a piece with the likes of Shane Taff. Really, I found, I didn't give it, look, I don't care if anyone else listened to that or whatever. I found it really powerful, and talking about his dad, and at the time anyway, hopefully he still is. I haven't seen Shane in a while, but Shane was in a kind of good place in life as well, and that was lovely. And even like during COVID, like got the, I think it was the 1991 team back together on their 30th anniversary or whatever. And I, as someone who maybe started out watching those guys, it was brilliant. It was really, really brilliant. But look, we've been lucky in terms of, I'm not just saying this in the pod, like I consider myself very lucky. I've had some amazing experiences following Dundalk. I've met some amazing people, seen some amazing players, some brilliant memories that, I'll never forget, hopefully. And, it's a special club. And when we came so close to losing it recently, I think it's for that reason that it's those connections. It's the friendships you make, the crack you have. And look, be it, we'd all prefer if we were heading off to an Alkmaar again, or I think this week was the anniversary. It was always an anniversary. That's the brilliant thing about the Dogs history. I think it was like, was it 8 years ago this week? I was in St. Petersburg, and we were flying back to play the cup final and all this, mad times. But like, whether it's Russia or away to Kerry or away to Cove or whatever, like we'll always have them. They'll be different, don't get me wrong, but I think the fact that it's still there and it can still enjoy it. But like I do hope on the whole people have enjoyed it. I'm sure people cursed us from time to time, and they probably got depressed listen to us from time to time, but hope that a few laughs as well. And look, you're right, the live show was brilliant, and I have to say fair play to you as well, because look, I'm at this, I went into journalism at 15 years of age, and you had no real interview experience. And I remember the first episode, I think we had to do the intro about 30 times or something. You were that nervous. And it's funny, I actually, I think I was away or something. I can't remember why I wasn't around that day, but you did the interview with Jerry and Brendan from the Trust there recently, and I remember you sent it to me, and I listened to it obviously as when it went out, and I remember just texting you and saying, well done, because I mean your progress from that to this has been brilliant too, and it's been fun as well. Like, listen, we're there's no hiding that we're mates outside of Dundalk FC. We were before, and hope we are after, and it's been, do you know what? It's been something we probably look back on with more fond memories than negative in time. I think that needs a bit of electroshock therapy or something in between. But it has been great, and it's been fun. And again, regrets, I've had a few, but then again, too few to mention. So it's been great. And I agree with you, by the way. Just final word from me, because I speak too much. But on the sponsors, it just simply wouldn't happen without them, and they've been brilliant. And obviously the listeners, because like that, it's been a hard listen at times. It's been hard to do. I'm sure it's been a harder listen. We're sort of obligated to do this, or we felt obligated to do this week by week. But you certainly weren't when you were tuning in. So, yeah, look, it's been good.
Right. Well, again, thanks to all our sponsors throughout the years. So for this season anyway, again, we want to thank our main sponsor, the unit, with associate sponsors Player Fit, Jerry McNamee Consultants, Malone Financial Services, and Mullins took on our YouTube this year. So after 4 years, this is our last dance as the press box on a weekly basis. So again, from both of us, we want to thank each and every one of you that listened every week. And hopefully someday we'll see you again. But until then, thanks again for listening.
Look how the stars turn on.